Who-dats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
You really don't know, because you don't know what we're trying to do. You guys don't look at the films. You don't know what happened. You really don't know. You think you know, but you don't know, and you never will, okay?
Oh, you got to love Coach Jim Mora. I've gotten to know him over the years, and Saints fans, that should take you back. But you know what? We bring it full circle. We have Jim Mora yelling at the media back in the day, but it's appropriate because when it comes to the Saints quarterback situation, since Drew Brees has gone down, we have word now that Taysom Hill looks to be the starter, not Jameis Winston. So maybe none of us knew. I'm going to bring in my team, producer Justin Thomas and Scott Shanle. Shanle, you know, I'm glad we're doing this podcast late in the week because a lot of podcasts were talking Jameis. Now it looks like Taysom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of shocked we found out as soon as we did. I really thought this would be a game day thing, but it's hard to hide stuff like this long, especially when you're talking about reps in practice. But I just look at it from this perspective. You know, Coach Payton has talked a lot about Taysom Hill over the years, even mentioning him in the same breath as Steve Young. They've made a financial commitment to him, much more than over Jameis Winston. He's familiar with the playbook. You don't have to really taper the playbook down as much because he has that knowledge over the last few years. So I think it's probably a logical move on the part of the organization, but I still think it surprised some people and it did really kind of surprise me as well.
It surprised me, I think, mainly because Jameis goes in right when Brees gets hurt a week ago, and you thought, well, I mean, it's the same thing as last year. Bridgewater goes in when Brees gets hurt. And I know Taysom a year ago didn't have the Taysom deal and maybe the cachet, but I'm surprised. I mean, Justin Thomas, first of all, Justin, I feel like maybe the energy level is not where it normally is. Are you excited for this podcast?
Hell yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Are you surprised by the Taysom Hill decision?
I have to be honest. I am. I know what Scott said kind of makes sense that, you know, Sean's been talking up Taysom, but I really thought Jameis was going to be the one to take the reins. And it'll be curious to see. Sean's either going to look like a genius or it's going to blow up in his face.
Yeah. Shanle, you know, you and I have loved to debate Taysom Hill, and I know you don't think he's a long-term answer, if I'm accurate with that statement, but you're not alone. I know a lot of people who cover the Saints, around the Saints, it's really split, isn't it, on whether he's the guy moving forward?
It is, and I think it continues to get more split, especially when you had the signing of Jameis Winston, who is a very polarizing figure based on what he did off the field and the turnovers he had on the field. But there's no denying the guy threw for tons of yards. So I think that makes it even more of a polarizing, debate between Taysom and Jameis. But for me, Mike, the bottom line for me is I don't want to watch Tim Tebow offense in New Orleans. And I think Taysom Hill is a better Tim Tebow. He's a good athlete. The guy cannot throw the ball. I don't want to watch a Tim Tebow offense in New Orleans.
You know, I love how you were real calm out of the gates after the Jim Morris sound, how we don't know. And then the real Shanle just pops in right there. I love that.
Well, because I know you and I differ on this, and I don't want to sound like a Taysom Hill hater. I'm a Taysom Hill quarterback hater for sure. But the guy is a phenomenal football player. He's a great guy. He's been great in the community. But I do not believe he is an NFL quarterback. To be an NFL quarterback, you have to be able to drop back 40 times a game if need be. You have to be able to complete 65% of your passes, if not more. And I don't think he could do that over the course of a season.
Okay, Sean Payton's brother is a magician, and Sean Payton's going to pull out all his magic tricks. Is this a game? Is this a scenario that's right in his wheelhouse right now?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say some people are. If you check social media, it's going crazy with Sean Payton's overthinking it. Sean Payton's trying to outsmart himself. But I'm going to trust a guy who's won as many games as he has. He's had the most successful offense. It can be debatable in NFL history compared with the San Francisco 49ers who won championships with Bill Walsh. But I'm going to trust the guy that he knows what he's seeing in practice. And it's been a weird year. We haven't had OTAs. We haven't had minicamp. We haven't got to see preseason games. So I'm going to trust Coach Payton when he says guy gives us the best chance to win, because to me, Jameis just is lacking the knowledge of the playbook. He has not been able to run the playbook to the extent that Taysom has over the past few years. So I think I'm going to give Coach Payton the benefit of the doubt on this one.
All right. The difference to me in a year ago is you really knew what you had for the most part with Bridgewater. He'd been in the system longer. He had the offseason, he had the preseason, and you felt differently. I'm looking at this, though, whether it's Taysom or whether it's Jameis, Shanle, is that leash a lot shorter, obviously, than what we had a year ago?
I don't know. I don't know what the commitment is to Taysom outside of the financial commitment is a huge statement the Saints made when they gave him that type of money. So I think you have to give a guy that you made a financial commitment like that to, you have to give him an opportunity to show you he can play quarterback for your team. Because, Taysom's going to have, to me, this game and maybe another game to show that he can do it before I think that Coach Payton would say, all right, Jameis, now it's your turn. We got to wait for Drew to get back. This just isn't working. But it really comes down to this. The defense, if they play really good football and they play great and they don't make the Saints offense have to throw the ball, I think you can get by with Taysom playing quarterback. But if the Atlanta Falcons jump out to a 14-0 lead and now you have to throw the ball to get back in it, I think that's where you could see Jameis earlier than maybe normal.
And here's the thing about Jameis, too. You have this component. I know the Saints are all in, but they also have to think about their future somewhat. If Taysom gets it done and is kind of that serviceable guy and the Saints defense is playing well and they hold the fort down, you don't throw Jameis out there where I know Jameis is talented, Shanle, but mentally he's got to be suffering a little bit with all the criticism, with all the mistakes. If he doesn't have to go out there and fail and is able to learn the system and then come back a year from now, it's twofold. He'll be more confident, but also it's easier for the Saints to keep him because he didn't go out there and light it up and get a Bridgewater type deal because of it.
The fact that you mentioned that, I was going to mention, I talked to Zach Streif earlier this morning, and Zach thinks that's part of the play as well. If you don't need Jameis to go win you a Super Bowl, but you think Jameis and Taysom are kind of close in terms of what they're going to do for your team, why not play the guy that you've already paid and let the other guy who you want to bring back, now, just like you said, you've limited his leverage power. So that could be part of it too. And also the scenario I gave with getting down 14-0, now throwing Jameis in to help get you back in the game because he can throw the ball better. It's really not fair to Jameis because now you're asking a guy who's turned the ball over a ton in his career to come in and start slinging the ball around to get you back into games. So ideally, if you play a game and Taysom doesn't play well, I would rather see Jameis become the quarterback next week after a full week of practice where he doesn't have to come in and start slinging the ball around to get you back into a game.
Exactly, because that's Jameis's whole problem is he always tries too much. And to me, that kind of plays into this scenario completely.
Yeah, no question. And it's tricky. It really is. And hopefully the Saints don't get down 14-0. We're not even talking about this scenario. They play ahead of the chains the whole game. They run the ball well. They play action pass. Taysom throws some deep balls to Deontay Harris because they're running the ball so well. And that's the type of game you're hoping for. And really, it comes down to over this course while Drew's gone is defense playing good, like I said, taking the ball away, and offense protecting the ball. Without Drew Brees, you're not good enough offensively to turn the ball over and still to win games. So really, the one thing I know about Coach Payton, and I've said it before, is he sits in the meeting room and he'll say, when you carry the football for this organization, you carry the hopes and aspirations of every single person in this organization. So he will not tolerate people who turn the ball over. And that would be the priority number one at the quarterback position.
Well, a lot of the media was fooled by this, including me. I was very surprised that Jameis Winston's not the starting quarterback for this game. And you knew the line of questioning. A lot of the media felt like Jameis was the guy. We're going to talk to C.J. Gardner Johnson, he's becoming one of my favorite guys. I know he's one of those guys that when he's not in your team, he bugs the hell out of you. But I really enjoyed talking to him after the game. We're going to see what makes C.J. Gardner Johnson tick in just a bit. We're going to also talk to Alvin Kamara one-on-one about his great season. Stuff you're not going to get in any other podcast, folks, I'm telling you. But let's bring in Jared Cook. I thought this was great. And this is before they made the announcement that Taysom was a starter. And he was asked, what has surprised you about Jameis Winston and what makes him different than Teddy Bridgewater? We kind of bridge both answers together. Here's what Jared Cook had to say about Jameis Winston.
I didn't know how big of a clown he was. Really didn't know his personality. And now we all kind of see it, who he really is, and kind of Jameis is Jameis, man. Teddy was kind of a, cool cat, smooth cat, like laid back kind of Florida boy. But Jameis is he a wild boy. He on another level with it.
Okay, now if that was on a Twitter headline, that could be misconstrued. That's why I like to play the whole thing. We're not quote unquote that media, but I think in media training they tell these players, "Hey, listen, watch everything you say because they'll pick apart like little things." Like the headline in The Athletic or something like that could have been, "Jared Cook says Jameis is just Jameis. He's a clown. He's wild." But when you really read between the lines there, Shanle, it shows you how Jameis Winston has really acclimated himself to this locker room, and his teammates like him. And I covered him in Tampa, and I know guys that covered him at Florida State. Jameis has done a lot of weird stuff, a lot of questionable stuff. But the two things you know about Jameis is he works hard, and his teammates like him, and you can hear that in Jared Cook's voice.
Yeah, Mike, I think Jared Cook missed the media training that you're talking about because
I'm trying to help him.
He did Jameis no favors. I mean, you call the guy clown type. He's a wild boy. And what do we know about Jameis? He's had off the field issues. He turns the ball over a ton. So you have Jameis. Just like Jameis, everybody ever seen that meme where he's squinting because he can't read the play clock in college? That's Jameis's agent looking at Jared Cook like, what are you doing? You're killing my client's leverage with those type of comments. I don't know. I think I get what Jared's saying because from everybody I've heard, Jameis has been great in the organization. Teammates love him. He's been great in the locker room. He has fun with everybody. But just based on what his history has been off the field and the turnover machine, I don't think those comments help him in this situation.
That almost makes me want to create a meme where it's like Sean Payton's a father and he has two sons, and one of them has gotten in a ton of car wrecks and the other one has gotten straight A's, and he's like, I think both you guys are my sons and I love you, but I'm not sure I want to give the keys to this guy this week. Does that make any sense?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. That would be great.
All right, let's move on to, we're going to get to the Atlanta Falcons, and that's why we love having Shanle, because we know he loves the Atlanta Falcons so much. We'll get to CJ Gardner Johnson in a second. But boy, a guy who's been huge, he's been the Saints' best player, and he's going to be even bigger the next few weeks whenever Breeze comes back. We'll see how long that is. We'll get to that in a little bit too, is Alvin Kamara. He's done so much, and he's proven so many people wrong, including me. If you listen to past podcasts, I didn't like his demeanor. I didn't know if he deserved that contract. You shut me up, Alvin. You've been lights out this year. And I had a chance to talk to him after the 49ers game and talk about his season where, he's obviously the best running back in the NFL right now in terms of numbers. And he's in the MVP conversation for some. But I asked him about his play this year, and here's what he had to say. How confident are you right now on the football field?
Man, I feel great, man. I'm just blessed to be healthy and blessed to be out here just with this team. I think it's guys that's like-minded on this team that are going for the same goals. And, it makes it easy to play in an environment like that. So just blessed to be here.
Alvin Kamara in that statement, Shanle, and his actions this year, he has grown up so much. Not that he was ever a problem off the field, not that he was ever a bad guy or anything, but he was kind of, Mark Ingram's guy coming in because he's a rookie. But I see the way he is on the field, like helping teammates up and encouraging them. You didn't see that in past years. It's good to see that from Kamara along with a great play.
Yeah, he's definitely maturing. It's great to see him back healthy this year compared to last year. But I think the one thing that helped Alvin was when Michael Thomas went down, it was no longer the Michael Thomas and Drew Brees show. It was we have to get the ball to Alvin Kamara. And I think in that moment, Alvin knew he was going to get a ton of balls to come his way. That always helps a lot of athletes evolve. I think as you mature throughout the NFL and you get older, you get a little wiser. I think knowing that he had to put the team on his shoulders really helped him see the importance of his status in the organization, helped him help the younger guys along because he needs those guys to help support him. So I think Michael Thomas going down early really helped Alvin Kamara grow as a person.
And he's obviously going to be big moving forward. But from a defensive standpoint, I want to pick your brain on this. With Taysom Hill in there, not Drew Brees, how is that going to affect Kamara now?
Well, I don't think it's going to affect Alvin as much as it's going to affect all the other receivers, tight ends, wide receivers, just the type of the type of passing game that Drew is very good at. He's surgical in that short to intermediate passing game. I think you'll see Taysom unleash more deep balls off the play action pass than we did with Drew, but it's not really going to affect Alvin because Taysom, he can still throw the screen passes. He can still throw those H option choice routes out of the backfield where Alvin's working a linebacker one-on-one. So I really don't think having Drew out of the game will affect Alvin as much. Now, scheme-wise, where it's going to affect Alvin is I think you're going to see more teams play 8 and 9 guys in the box and really load up the box and take away the run and try to take Taysom out of the running game. So that will affect Alvin in terms of his running ability as well.
That is interesting because to me, Latavius Murray is such a great compliment. I think he's kind of an underrated guy in this offense with the kind of ground and pound potential mindset of this offense with Taysom. How about Latavius Murray's role along with Kamara now? Because he can catch the ball too.
No question. You would think that Latavius will get more touches. Anytime Drew goes out, you're going to throw the ball much less, maybe 10, 15 times less a game, depending on how the game works out. But you have to find a role for Latavius Murray. If you're going to run the ball and teams are going to pack the box, you can't just say, oh, you have 8 guys in the box. Well, we're going to throw it every play. Because now you've let the defense dictate to you what you're going to do. You still have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. If there's 8 guys in the box, there's a safety down. You have to have faith in your O-line and a big back like Latavius that you're going to get 3 or 4 yards on a run. So I think he's definitely going to have a bigger role.
Okay, what about, before we jump to the defense, what about Michael Thomas? Hasn't had that big game. Obviously, he's been injured and kind of, it's been weird with Breeze going out and all the unsettledness of the offense. But what about Michael Thomas now with Taysom? I mean, what about his role in all this?
Yeah, I want to see Michael get work back into the offense because, when you miss that much time, you're going to be rusty. And you point to last week where when Jameis came in the game, whether it was Jameis or it was Michael, you could see what timing does to a quarterback and a receiver because Jameis threw the ball a couple times. Michael there late in the game wasn't even close. So whether that was on Jameis or Michael, who knows? But the timing wasn't there like you see with number 9 and number 13 when they're really rolling. So I would just imagine you won't see Michael with 10 to 15 catches a game because I don't think that's going to be the offense they're going to run while Taysom's at quarterback. But you still have to find a way to get him the ball because you have so many weapons on offense that if you get 13 involved and now teams start to double cover him, that opens up the offense for everybody else.
Come on, Taysom can hit that slant to Michael Thomas, right?
Maybe one or 2 times, yeah, maybe 50% of the time.
But I always see with Taysom though, Shanle, he completes a pass early. The defense, it kind of keeps them on their heels a little bit. Don't you think they got to throw the ball a little bit early just to keep them guessing?
They probably will. They'll probably throw the ball just to do that. Otherwise, they're going to really pack the box. And if I were Atlanta, I would put 8 guys in the box and I would blitz from the onset. I would get after Taysom. I would make the Saints throw the ball and make him throw it consistently because that's the one thing I haven't seen from Taysom. I'm not saying he can't throw the football. He's got a strong arm. He throws it good deep. But every short to intermediate routes, I should say, routes that you win NFL games with every Sunday, I have not seen enough consistency out of him. Whether it's a deep 15-yard in, a deep comeback along the sideline, those are the type of throws that win you games on Sundays because you can't defend him when you have a good throw and a good catch.
Greg Williams would love hearing that from you. You know it.
Well, I've sat in that room for 3 years, so I know exactly what the defensive game plan would be.
All right, let's talk Saints defense. And, last year Teddy Bridgewater played great when Breeze was out, 5-0. But we've talked about this over and over. While we give Teddy a lot of credit, it was the defense that really stepped up in that stretch. And now we're seeing signs more and more, really began in that Bucs game. It continued against the Niners. The defense is playing well, Shanle, and that bodes well for this team right now.
The defense was the lightning rod early in the season. Everybody thought, and I did too, I thought this was going to be the strength of this team. I saw it over the last couple of years, the youth, the athleticism that has been put into this defense. And so I was kind of shocked early on in the season, especially with the secondary, how bad they were. But you see the last couple games, not as many explosive plays. The ball is not going over our secondary's head. When you do that, you make teams earn everything they get. That's been the biggest improvement. Secondly, had the best run defense in the NFL for the past 3 years. I think they broke the record or close to the record, 52 games with no 100-yard rusher. Outstanding run defense. My only gripe about this defense is they need more takeaways. Whether you have to blitz more, whether you have to do something to be a little bit more aggressive to create fumbles and interceptions, that is the difference between winning championships and not. I saw a stat the other day where over the last 20 years, the Patriots have a lot of numbers and a lot of stats that are really good, but they've been by far the best in turnover takeaway margin over that time, and that's why they've won championships. So defensively, take the ball away more, and I think you will argue that you're a Super Bowl caliber team.
I love having you on for a number of reasons on this podcast, but especially questions like this one. When you're a part of a defense, you've been criticized early, but man, you're playing to your potential. You feel good about yourself, and you know the offense needs you. How much does that motivate a defense like the Saints right now?
Oh, big time. And I think that's what you saw last week. You really saw the Saints defense start to play the way we all thought they could play at the start of the season. When Drew Brees got hurt, when they saw Drew Brees not come back for the second half, the Saints defense probably played their best football they've played all year. Same thing they did last year when Drew left with a thumb injury and Teddy had to take over for 5 games. The Saints defense really won those 5 games. Teddy did a good job, but it was really about the Saints defense. So I think that speaks volumes about the role that they have over there in terms of the leadership that they have and guys knowing when it's time for them to step up and carry their own weight.
How about Quan Alexander just jumping right in the starting lineup and Alex Anzalone's on a milk carton a week ago? How crazy was that?
It was kind of crazy, but like I said, when you make a trade like that and you give up a draft pick in the middle of the season, you're not trading for that guy to play special teams. So it didn't surprise me that he started. It surprised me that Alex didn't play very much at all. And I think some of that had to do with what the 49ers were doing personnel-wise. Now, when we start playing teams that run a tight end and 2 running backs and you have 3 linebackers on the field, I still think Alex is going to play. But right now it's a 2-linebacker league, and those 2 linebackers are going to be Demario Davis and Alexander.
All right, let's get to my guy, my man, CJ Gardner Johnson. Maybe it's just because we're about the same height. I don't know. I love a guy that's an overachiever. He's obviously a great athlete. Maybe had his best game, though, a week ago. He's been known for, getting in fights in practice and antagonizing Chicago Bears, but he looked good last week, Shanle.
Yeah, he did. And I think he's one of those guys that you could argue. I love Demario Davis. I think he's a great linebacker. You could argue that Chauncey is the defensive MVP so far this year.
Ooh,
every week
really?
he shows up. And last week I found it hard almost every single play. They were talking about 22. He just flies around all over the field. He makes plays. Still struggles a little bit in pass coverage. He's not really. He's more linebacker than he is DB by the way he plays the game. And that's okay because Dennis Allen will put you in position to succeed. Eventually, you're going to have to cover some people every now and then. But this guy blitzing, this guy tackling, he's one of the best in the box safeties in the NFL, and he's taking advantage of his playing time on the field.
You just added to my more likely segment. Question now. That's what you do, Shanle. That's what we do on the fly. We don't have these big meetings beforehand, but you just gave me a good question to ask you coming up here. Well, speaking of CJ Gardner Johnson, what I love about covering sports is you see personalities and they're just different than other players. And he's a different guy, different mindset when he goes out there. And some players come into the league and they're confident right away and they don't back down. And he's definitely that guy. We have many one-on-one interviews on CST that I translate to this podcast. And CJ Gardner Johnson was one of them after the 49ers game. Here's a sample of that. I think Saints fans, you'll get a kick out of this. I wanted to kind of pick his brain on why he is who he is.
You don't back down from anything. Where does that come from? You don't seem intimidated by much, and you haven't been in this league a long time. Is that just who you've always been?
Growing up like that. I mean, this may sound kind of crazy, but I always was the underdog. I had athletes coming up when I was coming up. So I always had that dog in me. I can't let nobody beat me. And going out there to compete, I'm still learning. This is only my second year. So I'm only tapping into what could be something great, but I'm just playing within the defense, playing within this team, and going out there to help get wins.
And we mentioned the don't back down mentality. The fact that you have been an underdog, do you think that has just made you a better player and that will keep you around this league longer having that mentality?
I love it when guys doubt me. Oh, he can't press. Oh, he can't tackle. He can't play all right, we're going to play Sunday. So, my coaches say trust in my ability and my technique, go out there and trust my teammates and don't let my teammates down. So that's what I do every Sunday.
Shanle, he wears his emotions on his sleeve 24/7. I love that. I love everything he said.
We definitely know he wears his emotions on his sleeve. I think anybody who's seen him this year, especially, we know there's an emotional part to his game, and it's really for guys like that. It's controlling those emotions and harnessing them on the field, and he definitely did that last week. Like I said, I think he's been playing some of his best football, and the sky's the limit for him. it's one of those situations where you start to look at guys on the field, like how do we get guys like that on the field more? But at the same time, you're going to have to take people like Marcus Williams or Malcolm Jenkins off the field. And I think the Saints aren't ready to do that yet. But I just love the energy he brings. As long as he harnesses it for good, I think that really helps come game time.
You ever played with anybody like him?
I can't really think of anybody who is always on like that, like always on. Some guys, they there's ebb and flows. They kind of roller coaster. Sometimes they're high, sometimes they're not as high, but he's always on. So I can't think of anybody.
And Shanle, his play last year, we saw glimpses of it. That was a big reason that Von Bell's not here, even though, they knew they couldn't probably afford Von Bell and what, the Bengals paid him. But that was a big part of Von Bell leaving, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we all know that Coach Payton wanted to bring Malcolm back and has always talked about being regretful that they let him get out of the building. Vaughn leaving was more so, I think, because they felt like they could get Malcolm Jenkins back. But I don't know if the Saints felt they would have Chauncey playing the way he is playing this year. Like I said, the case can be argued he's a defensive MVP. He's been playing so well.
All right, before we get to more likely, it's as my voice cracks because I'm so excited about this question. The Atlanta Falcons are on the schedule. Shanle, why don't you like the Falcons? You're pretty I've never seen you get riled up too much, but when I bring up Atlanta, it's a little different with you.
Well, first of all, when I got to New Orleans, I had no idea about the Saints-Falcons rivalry, and the special part of that was the Who Dat Nation, the Saints fans, let me know we hate Atlanta. Like our city, we hate Atlanta. And then social media, the advent of social media coming in at the time really helped you see this two cities fight back and forth. So as a player, you like to jump in on that. And then playing, that hatred for Atlanta came when we were having a ton of success, and Atlanta was pretty good too. I never felt like they gave us the respect we deserved. Even after winning a Super Bowl, we always kind of represented for the NFC South. I said that at one time they were our little brother. We were like the big brother. Eventually, they'll win every now and then, but we own them. And that hatred for Atlanta grew because I never felt like they respected us for the way we kind of ran the NFC South and always kind of dealt with that team.
All right, it's like a little brother, but are they kind of like that irritating little brother because they're always yapping, but they've never won a damn thing?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. They've had good years. It's not like, we're just beating up on this helpless little team and every year, we're bullying them. They've had really good teams. They've had a franchise quarterback since 2008. They've had Julio Jones for a number of those years. Tony Gonzalez was a Hall of Fame. They've had really good teams, and they haven't won anything. And yet they still chirp and act like, they act like they've ran the NFC South division. They've gone through head coach after head coach while Sean Payton's been here since 2006. It just drives me crazy.
All right. Raheem Morris is a very nice man. I covered him in Tampa. But, to me, Atlanta wants to bring in somebody like a big name or something. But if Raheem keeps winning, Shanle, it's going to be a dilemma there.
Yeah, it is. And I think if you're Atlanta, you feel like you have a chance to win some games because you have talented players. There's no dispute that Atlanta has some talented players. The future of that franchise is going to hinge on whether or not they're going to bring Matt Ryan back or they're going to start over at quarterback. The hard thing with interim coaches, Mike, is, you just went from a guy who couldn't win, and then you bring in an interim coach. You can only go up, right? And he's done a good job, probably should be 4-0, but you like to see how that coach interacts in the building day in and day out. And you're only getting a small sample size. And if Raheem Morris continues to win and continues to finish the season strong, I definitely think it's something you have to consider because you've been able to see it live. There's no unknown with what you're getting.
Yeah, you got to give him a lot of credit. He's done a great job with the Falcons. And speaking of challenges, Justin, you know what time it is. All right, the Tim Tebow offense. Can't get that out of my head with Scott Shanle breaking down Taysom Hill earlier in the podcast here. But I digress here, regress, or whatever it is. I'll bring back Justin Thomas. This is more likely 3 hypothetical questions. My first one, and my co-hosts have not heard these questions, so it makes it spontaneous and hopefully fun. In terms of Taysom Hill and that Tim Tebow offense, what is your confidence level with Taysom Hill replacing Drew Brees in the short term, as it looks like in the coming weeks, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you have no confidence at all in Taysom, 10, you think one day he will, be the starting quarterback. You believe in him. Is it a 5? Is it a 6 or a 7? Or is it 8 or higher?
Right now, I'm going to go with a 6. There's no doubt in my mind that Taysom is athletically talented. From what I've seen from him in the QB position, there's just not enough for me to feel like he's capable of running the show. That could change. Maybe he has a good game this week, but I don't think, like Scott said earlier, I haven't seen enough from him throwing the ball to feel confident enough going forward that he can run a team.
And we know one thing: he won't be blocking punts on Sunday versus the Falcons. All right, man. I wish I had kind of a drum roll, please. Shanle, your Taysom confidence level, 1 to 10. Is it 5 or lower? Is it 6 or 7? Or is it 8 or higher?
Now, is this for this week only, or is this for him being the man for 5 years? Like, is this a
Shanle always keeps me honest. I'm gonna say right now this week, right now. And really I kind of coined it, it's in the short term. I'm not talking about long term, but short term with Brees out.
Yeah, short term, I'm going to give him a higher number because I think he can manage this team to some victories because of how good this defense is playing. So it's not so much I think he can carry this team to wins. I think he can manage this team to win. So I'm going to go with a 5.
That's your higher number? What was it going to be?
Yeah. If it was a franchise, if it was 5 years, I would have said 1 or 2.
Oh, my goodness. Oh my God.
I think he's a game manager. I think the Saints defense, if they don't play well, if the Saints defense gives up 30 points to Atlanta and they get down early, I mean, it would be ugly because he'd have to throw the ball to get back into it. What I think about is Broderick Bunkley, who played defensive tackle, I think in 2012 with the Saints. He came from the Broncos. And I'll never forget, Bunkley was sitting in his locker. He was 2 lockers down from me, and we started talking about Tim Tebow, and he just rolled his eyes and he said, "I tell you what, when that guy was at quarterback, we sat in our defensive meeting room every week and said, guys, we cannot give up more than 10 points because we will not win with this guy throwing the ball." And I think that's what's going on in the Saints organization. We cannot give up more than 14 points because we won't win if we have to throw the ball. And I just think that's how the Saints defense is going to roll this week, and they're going to play really good.
Hey, burying the lead, that was a good story. But Broderick, let me remind you that when you were at Florida State, Tim Tebow had a lot of fun against your college team. I'm just saying right there. I got to speak up for my former Gator there. You know what? I'm going to say a 7. I feel good about him in the short term. And, I like Taysom in terms of the future. We have fun debating on this podcast. But right now, I feel like it's a 7 just because of Sean Payton. And Sean Payton I trust in terms of game planning. I was so surprised in what he did against the Bucs a couple weeks ago, and we've seen it over and over again with Sean Payton. I think this plays into his hands. He loves it when people bet against him, like when he was an underdog against the Bucs. He loves it when people thought it was Jameis, and he loves it when people are saying, "Oh, Taysom's good, but he's not a starting quarterback." So I can't wait for this game, Shanle, by the way. I mean, this is one of the most anticipated games in terms of game plans. I'm really excited about watching this game.
Well, luckily for everybody involved, we're playing the Atlanta Falcons, whose defense is nothing great. If we were playing Baltimore, or some defense that could do anything, I would be much more worried. But I think Atlanta's defense has enough holes in it that the Saints offense is still good enough to take advantage of it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, well, sticking with quarterbacks, I love Drew Brees. 5 cracked ribs, the collapsed lung. He's out with a ball cap, trying to hang in there at practice this week. That's what Drew Brees is. That's why he's great. But, just like Jameis Winston, the ultimate wild card is how long will Drew Brees be out? I'm looking at the schedule here. He's going to be out this week. Do you think it's going to be 4 games? Do you think it's going to be 5 games? Or do you think it's going to be longer, Justin Thomas? And keep in mind, if it's 4 games, that means he's back for that Chiefs game, which may be a target for him. But is it 4 games? Is it 5 games? Or is it longer for Drew Brees?
I think Drew's competitiveness is not going to allow him to sit out. I think he's going to try and come back as soon as he can. I think it is going to be the 4th game. I think that Chiefs game is a big matchup. If we can somehow win 2 of the next 4 games, of the next 3 games, I think it's a good. Maybe they might sit Brees, but I just think the team's going to be ready for him to come back. I know he's going to be ready to come back. And look, last year Breeze was able to come back. He had the bye; it kind of landed at the right time. But Breeze, healed up really fast and was ready to go after that thumb injury. So I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back as soon as possible.
That's good stuff. It's kind of hard to predict this stuff because maybe based on how the quarterbacks play, how the offense is moving, all that. But you look at the schedule, Shanley, you got Atlanta, you got Denver, Atlanta again, then Philly. None of those teams have winning records. And then you have the Chiefs come calling in a big, CBS game, December 20th, a few days before Christmas. So what do you think? Is it 4 games? Is it 5 games he misses that Chiefs game too? Or is it longer than that?
Well, I definitely think his sense of urgency is going to be related to how well the Saints team is winning. I think if they lose to Atlanta this week and would stumble against Atlanta again or Philadelphia or something like that, I think he's definitely going to press the timeline at getting back, and they'll do something medically to try to protect him as much as possible. But I think logically he'll be back by the Kansas City Chiefs game. Now, if this team rolls off 4 wins, maybe you go into the Chiefs game and you roll the dice and let Drew rest up for another game, because you're not winning a Super Bowl without Drew Brees at the quarterback position. You're just not. So if you're winning games and Taysom and Jameis, whoever's playing quarterback, is getting the job done, you let number 9 rest as long as possible and make sure he's ready come January.
But Shanley, when you look at it and the competitor Breeze is, does it play a part that they're the defending Super Bowl champs? You got this young hotshot Mahomes. How much does that motivate Breeze, or does he just look at it from a team perspective and also obviously from a health perspective? How much does that play a part in that, we want to show them who's boss at home and they're the champs and all that?
I think that plays a part, but that's where the organization says we have bigger goals than winning a regular season game against the defending Super Bowl champions. We're hoping we're playing these guys in Tampa Bay in February more than anything else. So it's all about getting Drew 100% healthy, not rushing. That's not an injury you rush, first of all. To come back and then re-crack the ribs or possibly puncture a lung, you do anything else from this point on, you're missing the rest of the season. So I think they will be 100% cautious, knowing that the games that matter are in January.
I agree. It's a tough question. I'm going to say 4. I think he comes back to that Chiefs game, but we all have that qualifier. If the team's playing well, you take it easy. But then again, last year he didn't take it easy. Came back before the bye week, which I thought was crazy, but it worked for him, and he played well before that playoff game anyway. All right, last more likely. Shanley kind of helped me with this one. I had another one. I was going to rip the Falcons, but we already did that. So we'll go back to the Saints defense. Kamara is the MVP of this team. He's the MVP of the offense. But who's the defensive MVP so far for the Saints? Just past the halfway point. Is it Demario Davis? Is it C.J. Gardner Johnson? Or how about a little David Onyemata? Maybe the most underrated Saint, playing well in that D-line with Shelton Rankins being out. So who do you got, Justin Thomas? Is it Demario Davis, C.J. Gardner Johnson, or Onyemata?
I'm kind of surprised you didn't throw in Trey Hendrickson.
There you go.
You can go off the board. Okay. You can go off the board.
Well, I do want to say, first off, I think before the season started, I picked CJ to be the person to step up this year. Look, I think this is tough. The last couple of weeks, everyone seems to be finally stepping up and producing. I have been impressed with Trey Hendrickson, though. He's come out of nowhere, it seems like. He, early on in the year, when the defensive line was struggling, was one of the few players getting sacks. I think he's like top 5 in sacks right now in the NFL. It seems like with him in there, Onyemata, like you mentioned, Cam Jordan the last couple of weeks seems to be playing more in the level we expect. He's really helped that line be the first line of defense. And I really like what C.J. Gardner Johnson's been doing this year, and especially this last game, he's great. But I've been really impressed with Trey Hendrickson.
Shanley, were you yelling because you were thinking the same thing?
I was thinking
I'm such an idiot.
Trey has really stepped up for where Cam Jordan has dropped off this year, and I think Trey's about to get paid big time in free agency. I don't know if it's going to be in New Orleans, but somewhere. Someone's always going to pay guys who get sacks. And I know I mentioned Chauncey earlier, but the more I sat here and thought about it, I was just thinking, Chauncey has played great the last 2 weeks. His coverage leaves a little bit to still be desired in terms of the passing game. So I'm going to go, this is like the safe pick, Demario Davis. He's the same guy every week. You don't see a drop-off, in terms of, they moved in positions. He's playing middle linebacker now compared to weak side. They made that change about 3 weeks ago. And I just think if there's a guy that you're going to name the most valuable player, it has to be a guy who shows up every single week and there's not roller coasters in his play, ups and downs. So I'm going to go with Demario Davis.
Hey, David Onyemata, if you're listening, I was there for you, my friend. I was there for you, just so you know. By the way, I love Trey Hendrickson when he meets the media. It's like he doesn't want to talk to the media. But, boy, in that Bucs game, I've never seen a guy happier to sack Tom Brady in my life. Just sacking him over and over again. It was that was a hell of a game for him. I got to go to Demario Davis too, Shanle, and I want to ask you this. When you kind of brought up C.J. Gardner Johnson as the MVP, I was thinking, yeah, there's a lot of candidates for that. But I think Demario Davis, to me, the last couple weeks, maybe playing his best football right now. I mean, he played well last year, but really playing well the last couple weeks.
And there's part of his game where this year I'm like, Demario hasn't made as many plays the past couple weeks as he did last year, but he did switch positions, and you do a lot of different things. It's not a simple thing where, I went from the outside to the inside. It changes a lot of what you do. It changes some of the plays you make. So you haven't seen him tackling the back as much in the flat or covering the tight end once you go to middle linebacker. But I still think you just look at his consistency in terms of he still can cover. He can still blitz as good as any inside linebacker. He's one of the best tacklers at inside linebacker. So because of his consistency and what you're getting every week, that's why I'd have to go with Demario.
All right. We agree on that. Okay, let's get to predictions. We all picked the Saints a week ago to beat the Niners, so that improves Justin Thomas to 7-2. Shanle at 7-2. I'm on your heels at 6-3. We have the Atlanta Falcons, those irritating little brothers who've never won anything, choke artists coming into the Superdome. Justin, what's your prediction, and what's the score too?
Man, I really wish we had the Who Dat fans in the Dome this week.
Yeah.
I think that would be such a huge factor. This is tough. I mean, this Falcons team clearly has shown that they're not, what they normally are every year. But they're still really, really talented. I think the offense has been rolling all year. The defense is kind of seeming like they're starting to get things together. They've won their last, 3 out of their last 4 games, I believe they won.
Yes.
I think this is tough. I think if Jameis was playing, I would feel way more confident about the Saints winning.
Shots fired.
Wow.
Unleash the cannon.
Well, at first it was Hendrickson, and now I'm the only Taysom guy.
I love Taysom, but I just sometimes when he comes in, I scratch my head and I think, what is Sean Payton doing? Who knows? Maybe Sean will prove us all wrong. I just am not sold on him yet. I think this will be a close game, but I think the Taysom factor is going to be the ultimate factor. And I'm going to pick the Saints to lose. I'm going to go 24-17.
Ooh, 24-17. By the way, on my scale of 1 to 10, I did give number 7 a 7. Nobody gave him that. So a week from now, I could be a crazy idiot or I could be a friggin' genius. All right, Shanle, who's going to win and what score?
I definitely think it's going to be a closer game than I would have said a couple weeks ago. Atlanta's playing better football. Gurley's looking a little healthier than he did last year, but I also know that Atlanta's coming off a bye week, so they should be rested up. They're the bumps and bruises should feel better. They're playing the Saints. They're going to try to make a statement. I just don't think Atlanta's defense is good enough to still stop a breezeless offense. I think Kamara is a matchup nightmare for Atlanta's defense. Deion Jones is a heck of an inside linebacker. I just don't think they have enough to stop the Saints offense. And I'm putting all my trust into the Saints defense. I believe the Saints defense that we saw in the second half of last week is going to be the defense we see this week. I'm going to go with the Saints 28, Atlanta 21.
28-21 Saints. By the way, a week ago, the Saints won 27-13, and I predicted 27-14. So I was almost there, guys. I got to salvage something after you guys just dominated me in this podcast. I feel like I just feel good about the Saints because of the defense right now, and I like what Sean Payton's going to do for the offense. I actually feel better about Taysom than Jameis, a quarterback, because I feel like Jameis would try to be the hero and try to do too much. I like the way that they may ease Jameis into all this. Taysom, to me, has deserved this. He's done everything for this offense. Look at the playoff game he played last year against the Minnesota Vikings. I want to see him throw the ball a little bit more early, kind of open things up. I'm going to say the Saints win this game. I'm going to do 27 again to 23. Give me 27-23. And if we're both right, then Shanle takes over first, and Justin and I are tied for second. And you know what? All three of us are going to meet together for the first time in New Orleans on Monday. Or actually, it'll be Sunday after the game, so we'll get to hash that out. I know the people listening to the podcast could care less about that, but I can't wait for Justin to meet Shanle in person for the first time. It's going to be reunited, and it feels so good. That's an old song, but you guys probably don't remember. But anyway, where are we on Twitter, Justin?
At Dundat Podcast.
At Dundat Podcast. We're on all the platforms. Please subscribe. iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, Google. It's never boring lately with the New Orleans Saints, is it, Shanle?
Never is boring, and I hope we get this win this week. Because Atlanta, when I'm looking at Atlanta's schedule, Mike, the interesting thing is they have a chance to play spoiler in the NFC South. They play the Saints twice in the next 3 weeks, and then at the end of the season, they play the Buccaneers twice in the last 3 weeks of the season. So the Atlanta Falcons could potentially play spoiler to the NFC South champion, but I like the Saints' chances because of the defense.
I do too. Defense really helps my confidence with this football team moving forward. Well, listen, should be a fun Sunday of football against those Dirty Birds. We'll recap it next week. But for Justin Thomas and Scott Shanle, I'm really Mike Nabors. Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe. Appreciate it.